Okay, it's finally time. I ordered the Relations race wheels, I think at the end of December. They had a sale going for a little bit. I ultimately ended up with these wheels because I was looking for a lightweight wheel and tire setup if I was going to upsize. And I've kind of just obsessed about that for a while and know that my miles per gallon is going to take a hit. And I've been tracking my mileage with the Fuely app simply because I'm commuting now every single day about 55, 60 miles, depending on what I have to do. So I'm using this thing regularly. And when I want to basically minimize my whining and crying because it's definitely coming. I know that upsizing will create a loss in mileage. It'll create, just it might become a little bit more sluggish. We'll see how all this actually sets into reality, but ultimately I wanted to kind of mitigate that and offset it. So I went for their forged wheel. They had a sale where they'd sell you 5 wheels at a reduced pre-order price. And I really like the look of these wheels. They do have the beadlock version where you can get like the hybrid look with the bead. You can get like a ring, a protection ring. Each wheel I think was like 5 pounds more. And I think once you added the protection ring, which looks really cool, it added more weight and it was just going opposite from where I wanted to be. So believe it or not, these wheels, they come in just shy of 20 pounds, which is really solid because the factory TRD wheels, I'll get a number on that shortly in the next part of the video. And I will do a weight comparison between the old and the new. These wheels are definitely lighter than the stock wheels. However, when you upsize the tire and there's so much tire, essentially, you do kind of, we're playing with the numbers essentially. And my goal was to minimize the amount of weight I was adding per corner because it is rotational mass and it has an effect on everything. Little background info too. The Wild Peaks that come on the TRD off-road, they're like the fake Wild Peaks. These are like the, highway version. They're not considered an off-road tire. And you can tell there's not much really happening here. There's not much protrusion. They're wearing like hell, even though I got an alignment done. It's a little bit low on the edges. It's kind of feathering on the edges, but you can see there's not much going on here. The factory size is the 265 60/20. I had a friend that upsized to the 275s in the real Wild Peak, the triple snowflake rated one, the actual off-road rated one. And I looked up the weight of that and just that alone is 10 pounds more per corner. So I think I know why Toyota did this. They did it to minimize the weight. These wheels are pretty good. There's some, preconceptions that these might even be forged wheels because they are pretty lightweight. I know that the true BBS, at least stamped version, the BBS forged wheels are, I believe, 3 or 4 pounds lighter a corner than the TRD wheels. But these wheels look great. It's not that. I just wanted to go with a smaller wheel other than a 20-inch and get some sidewall. I mean, look at that. It looks so good. I had a similar setup on my 4Runner. I didn't go up to 35s, but I did run a 33-inch setup, and it looked really good on the 5th gen 4Runner. I wanted something similar. I just think it gives you a proper look. And when you go to a tire like this, I mean, just take a look at the sidewall. It just looks so much better. So, yeah, I'll get into numbers and weight in just a moment. But first I'll show you some of the things that I've got. All right, in order to run these wheels, you definitely need different lug nuts. So I grabbed these off the RRW website when I was ordering the wheels. Not thrilled at the fact that they're open-ended, but this is what they offer, and I sometimes just rather go with the path of least resistance, go with what the manufacturer recommends or offer. We know they're going to seat properly, and these have a different seat than the original one. I'll get a video of that in a little bit, but you need this to kind of center off the wheel because the wheels are not hub-centric, which is a bummer. So these wheels, they fit a bunch of different models. The bore size or the hub size essentially is different on the latest gen 4Runner. I decided to get some hub rings. You can find these on Amazon. And these essentially take the 106 millimeter wheel opening and they bring it down to 95, which is the factory setup. So this will slip onto the hub and it'll essentially make sure that the wheel perfectly centers once it's mounted. They are supposed to center with the lug nuts. I just, you know, with this much weight and this much load per corner, I would rather do it right, quote unquote, make sure I have the least amount of issues, because when you move up, I know it was a thing on the 4Runners, it was super annoying. Everybody's complaining about steering wheel shake, and I also went through my own little saga of different things, and ultimately, was it the wheels, was it the tires? I don't even know. I got it sitting pretty well, but I had to kind of configure the wheels in a way that it was comfortable and there was no steering wheel shake. So I want to minimize the chance that there's any sort of issue. Okay, these wheels are the 17 by 8.5 zero offset. I believe the factory TRD wheels are about 55 plus 55 offset. They're pretty flush with the, you know, the fender overall. I think it's pretty good. Once you put on wider tires, I mean, it's actually quite good. So I know I'm going to poke out a little bit, but it was the only size that RRW offered. I'm not sure why. I would have loved to go a little bit less aggressive, maybe like a, I don't know, plus 12 or plus 18. Because the wheel is more aggressive than stock, I decided to go with an 11.5 inch wide tire. Factory tire is a 10.4 inch. The aftermarket ones that I got, they're rated 35 by 11.5, 17. Okay. When they say 35, if you look it up, it's actually a 34.5. It's not a true 35. I'm not sure if that's a thing across all 35s, but the true overall diameter is actually 34.5, which is 2 inches all around, a larger diameter. Essentially, you're going to be an inch, you know, taller when when the truck is seated on the ground. You'll be an inch higher. So we're going from 32.5 essentially to 34.5 overall diameter. So quite significant. We have to expect, you know, some loss there, but again, trying to minimize that. So the 11.5, believe it or not, actually weighed more than the 12.5. And I was, after researching it, I came down to the conclusion that people were saying that they actually make the tire stronger to hold more load, even though it is narrower. That's why it weighs more. And all around Toyo, these AT3s, super popular. They, for some reason, they have the lightest tire setups, and that's what I was going for. A lot of the 35s were around the 70-pound mark, maybe a little bit more, depending on which tire you were looking at. Could be low 70s. These landed, I believe, at 61, and if I got the 12.5 inch version, it would have been 59, I believe. So again, trying to minimize that extra weight, and that's how I ended up here. I just wanted something with the least amount of issues, not super wide. I don't want to be rubbing on the sway bar, any of that stuff. It is lifted, obviously, but just trying to minimize all any potential issues in the future. So we'll get to it. I will take these off, get this up in the air now. All right, here's the factory wheel. We're have to let it kind of rest on a box a little bit, so that might skew the weight slightly, but before it was showing about 72.5 or so. Coming in at 71.6 on the factory wheel and tire setup. And again, the more I look at this, the more I dislike it essentially. It's really just like a dressed up highway tire that's made to look like an off-road setup. And yeah, so take a look at that number. Here is the weight of the new setup. This is the Toyo and the RRW wheels. And we're coming just shy of 80 pounds, which is really solid. I mean, very small increase in weight overall. And man, they look nice. So just to show you what the hub-centric ring does, this is the factory hub, essentially. This is the new ring. It slips on. Obviously make sure it's fully seated. And now the wheel, when it slips on, it can rest on that perfectly. And I'll show you the difference in the lug nuts in just a moment, but those are the factory lugs. And I'll show you the comparison between the new and the old, but this wheel's ready to go on. And this is the difference between the lug nuts. You can see they wouldn't work. The factory lugs would not work. They're too large. They have a flat seat, and the new ones have a different end, and it matches up with the aftermarket wheel. So that is important to note. You'll need aftermarket lug nuts to properly seat the wheel and of course engage the correct amount of threads. All right, this is almost comical, but check out how much better that looks already. Just looks like it fills it in versus the rear. I mean, the rear looks like, yeah, something's missing, so. And as of right now, I am definitely thrilled with the amount of pokage I'm getting. I'm not looking for a super duper poke. Probably end up getting the TRD fender flares, wiring up the lights and painting the fenders gloss black to match. Because I'm just looking for a little bit, essentially. A little bit of poke. So this looks pretty good so far. Okay, first thing was first, get out and go for a ride. And I have good news. Everything worked out really nicely. It's driving smooth. Right away, I noticed the difference in the plushness of everything. It's just handles bumps a lot better. There's a lot more sidewall. The factory 20s were definitely kind of cutting into the sidewall available. And this setup, despite the tire having more, you know, I think it's a little bit stronger. It's got more plies. It's a C load rated tire. I didn't want to go D or E because that just adds weight, and I'm not doing any serious off-roading to justify that. So the overall ride quality is great. You can see I got some poke. I let it settle down, went for a ride. I think I'll try to do the TRD fenders and have them painted like I mentioned, but you can see there's a little bit of pokage. That's why I wanted to minimize that instead of going for the 12.5. I think that would have been too much. And as I mentioned before, I've been keeping track of the mileage, and I'll wait to post this review for a few weeks. We'll get a few cycles of the, you know, a few tanks in, so I can get a nice average for you and tell you guys how my mileage was impacted by moving to the 35's. And obviously you can go a little bit smaller than 35, but it's not going to make a huge difference overall, I don't think. The tires might be a little bit less pricey because anything that starts with 33 or 34 or 35 for some reason costs a little bit extra. So for me, the most important thing is that this thing rides smooth and rides proper. I noticed a little bit of increased road noise, maybe because they're new or maybe because they got a lot more tread and a little nubbier, but it's nothing unbearable, but it rides smooth on the highway. I attribute that to my balancer, the tire and wheel mounting, the hub rings, and the proper lug nuts. So I am thrilled that it's riding smooth, and I think it looks really awesome. I am getting a little bit of rubbing, which I'll address right on the mud flap here. And I know there's an easy fix, so either it can just rub itself away or I need to actually do something, but yeah, it looks awesome. Let me show you from the back. Oh yeah. But finally, she's sitting right. I mean, it looks like a truck now. Before, it looked a little puny. But you know what? Like I said, I'm going to update this after a few tanks, and we'll go from there. And I'll show you what my final thoughts are, make sure everything's still riding good. That way we get an accurate review, because a lot of times people just show the pictures. They're really happy with the way it looks, but there's compromises in other areas. And for me, I don't want any other compromises. I know I'm going to hit the mileage compromise. Aside from that, I really don't want too much extra compromise. I'm not willing to sacrifice that for the looks. So if it rides like crap, it's not for me. But so far so good, super positive. So keep you guys posted. Hey, so I've got a little bit of an update for you guys. It's been a few weeks since I had this done. I've been driving around with it since about April 17th, and now we're at the end of May. I was able to do a before and after for the miles per gallon. I've been tracking it with the Fuelie app, as mentioned earlier in the video. And before, my average, the last 5 fuel ups before I got the new wheels and tires was 17.92. So basically a flat 18. And that is the same type of driving I've been doing the last 5 fuel ups, which is afterwards, after I got the new wheels and tires. So trying to do real apples to apples, real world comparison here. And it looks like I came in at about 16.02 miles per gallon. So really just went from 18 to 16 as my overall average. Again, about 55, 60 miles a day during the week. For commuting, some around town driving, I do live in the mountains. It does definitely lower fuel economy. I've noticed that. And, I'm actually quite pleased with these results. I expected a larger loss. I expected like 3, maybe more. I was hoping to keep it between 2 and 3, but to come in at exactly around 2 miles per gallon, I think that's pretty good. If you look at what other trucks, something like a Ford Raptor gets, obviously a completely different league of vehicle, but I think the advertised fuel economy is much worse than that, much worse than the 16. And I think people are getting much less, like, they're modified and they're getting 12, 13. So obviously everybody drives differently. I drive pretty light-footed with this vehicle. It's not a race car. It's just a commuter and a family hauler at this point, and just our fun mobile. And, I think overall this is pretty respectable. So I'm quite pleased. The vehicle is lifted. It was lifted before and after. It's on a 3-inch lift. So, really killing fuel economy. Toyota's claims of, 20 or 21, whatever, average, I mean, that's just a little crazy. Obviously, it can get that on perfect conditions. I've squeezed it out before. I've squeezed out the 21 on this non-hybrid Platinum model before I got the wheels and tires, but it's not a common thing, obviously. The conditions have to be just right, and you have to be super light-footed. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. I'm super pleased with it. Got some other updates coming, but I wanted to give this information to anybody looking for that switch up to 35's. You got to get that, lift if you want the wider and more aggressive wheels and tires. And, there's a lot of different options, a lot of different tires, a lot of different load ratings. I just want to document what I did, which worked for me, and I'm overall pleased with it. It's been riding really smooth. I got used to the little extra road noise that the tires produce. I mean, it's really meant to be. I'm totally cool with it. Truck gets a little dirtier. I am waiting to put the TRD fender flares on, and I'll keep you guys posted. But let me know your thoughts, and we'll go from there. Thanks again.